the ESS Pioneer slipped through the darkness of space, humanity's first true interstellar vessel. Commander Ju-won Park stood on the bridge, watching as her crew prepared for the jump that would take them beyond their solar system for the first time. "All systems ready, Commander," said Lieutenant Tae-ho Kim from the navigation console. His fingers moved quickly across the controls, making final adjustments. "Engage when ready, Lieutenant," Park said calmly, though her heart raced. This was the moment that would make history. The ship hummed as its experimental drive activated. Stars blurred on the viewscreen, and for a moment, everything seemed to be proceeding according to plan. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Unexpected energy pattern ahead," shouted Science Officer Ji-eun Kong. "It's some kind of spatial anomaly. Evasive maneuvers." Park ordered, but it was too late. The Pioneer plunged into swirling blue light that engulfed the ship completely. For 3 long minutes, the crew held on as the ship shuddered violently. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the turbulence stopped. The viewscreen cleared to reveal unfamiliar stars. "Where are we?" Park asked, her voice steady despite the situation. Kim worked frantically at his station. "I can't match these star patterns to any in our database. We're somewhere else." Before they could process this information, the sensors detected movement. A massive ship approached, at least 5 times the size of the Pioneer. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent material unknown to Earth science. "We're being scanned," reported Communications Officer Hannah Lee. "And now they're hailing us." On screen, Park ordered, straightening her uniform. The viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with light blue skin and elaborate clothing adorned with symbols of rank. Behind the figure, several other aliens operated what appeared to be a command center. "Unregistered vessel, this is High Counselor Durin of the Imperial 8th Quadrant Patrol. You have entered sovereign territory without proper authorization. Identify your species and purpose immediately." Park stepped forward. "I am Commander Ju-won Park of the Earthship Pioneer. We are explorers who encountered an anomaly that brought us here. We come in peace." The alien's eyes widened. "Earth? This species designation is not in the Imperial Registry. You claim to have developed faster than light travel independently?" "Yes, this is our first interstellar mission," Park confirmed. There was a flurry of activity among the aliens on the screen. Durin spoke urgently with someone off camera before turning back. "This is most irregular. The Galactic Empire has catalogued all spacefaring civilizations in this sector for 12,000 years. Your existence represents a significant oversight." Chief Engineer Sung Ho Baek leaned towards Science Officer Kong and whispered, "Their ship design is inefficient. Look at those energy readings, they're wasting at least 30% of their power." Durin continued, apparently unaware of the side conversation. "The Empire spans 40% of this galaxy. We bring order and civilization to over 400 species across 12,000 star systems. Our technology and culture are the pinnacle of galactic achievement." The crew of the Pioneer exchanged glances as the alien continued to boast about the Empire's accomplishments. The alien spoke of million-year-old dynasties, of worldships that housed billions, and of technologies that could reshape planets. "Your vessel will be escorted to Hub World Primaris for proper processing and evaluation," Durin finally concluded. "There, the Imperial Assessment Committee will determine your species' place within the hierarchy." After the transmission ended, the bridge crew gathered around their commander. "Did you see their computer interfaces?" asked Tae-ho. "They're using physical controls for everything. We haven't used those for navigation in decades. And their translator technology has obvious flaws in syntax processing," added Hannah. "I could improve that in a week." Commander Park raised her hand for silence. "Let's keep our observations to ourselves for now. We're visitors here, and we need to understand the situation before we act." Through the viewscreen, they could see a second Imperial ship approaching to escort them. Its design was imposing but strangely outdated by Earth standards, all show and little practicality. "So this is the mighty Galactic Empire," Park said quietly. thousands of years old, hundreds of species, and technology that should be far beyond ours. But it isn't, said Beck. Not in any way that matters. Park nodded. We'll play along for now. Let them take us to their capital. Let them show us their empire. She turned to look at her crew, a small smile forming. But I think the galaxy is about to change in ways these Imperials never expected. The Imperial assessment chamber towered above the humans, its ceiling lost in shadows. 5 aliens of different species sat on a raised platform shaped like a half-moon. They looked down at the Earth crew with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Commander Park stood at the front of her crew, her posture straight and confident despite the intimidating setting. Behind her, Dr. Unmi Moon observed everything with keen interest, while Chief Engineer Sun Ho Beck kept his eyes fixed on the various technologies around the chamber. We welcome you to Hub World Primaris, said Supreme Assessor Yunsuk, a tall being with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors as he spoke. His voice came through translators as slightly mechanical but understandable. In my 300 years of service, I have never encountered an unregistered species with faster-than-light capabilities. This is highly unusual. We're honored to be here, Commander Park replied diplomatically. We look forward to learning about your society. A second assessor, Jinho, leaned forward. His reptilian features hardened into what might have been a frown. Our records indicate that no Imperial scout vessels have ever visited your star system. How did your species develop such technology without guidance? The question seemed to hold deeper meaning than its simple words. The humans exchanged glances. We developed it ourselves, said Park. Human innovation has always moved quickly. How quickly? Asked Yunsuk, his skin turning a deep purple. Dr. Moon stepped forward. From our first powered flight to reaching our moon took only 66 years. From our first computers to artificial intelligence took about 70 years. From our first space station to this interstellar ship took about 100 years. The assessors whispered among themselves, clearly disturbed by these timeframes. This is concerning, said Jinho finally. The natural development path for intelligent species takes thousands of years between these milestones. The standard developmental period is approximately 8,000 years from basic tools to space travel. Engineer Beck couldn't help but laugh, quickly covering it with a cough when Park shot him a warning look. The third assessor, Mireille, spoke up. She resembled a humanoid with iridescent feathers instead of hair. Such rapid advancement suggests dangerous instability. The Empire maintains peace by ensuring technological harmony among all species. We've noticed your technology, Beck said, unable to contain himself any longer. Your ships are impressive in size, but many of your systems seem outdated compared to ours. The assessors stiffened visibly. The chamber grew tense. Outdated? Jinho's translator couldn't quite hide his indignation. The Empire has perfected these technologies over thousands of years. Perfected or preserved? Beck asked. Your energy distribution systems waste nearly 40% of output. Your computer networks are centralized rather than distributed. Your life support systems use chemical filtration when bioadaptive systems are more efficient. Sung-ho, Commander Park warned quietly. Yunsuk's skin had turned almost black. This confirms our concerns. Your species develops without proper consideration for stability and balance. Innovation without wisdom leads to destruction. Dr. Moon stepped forward again. If I may ask, how does the Empire normally interact with new species? The fourth assessor, Dae Young, answered. He was small but had an air of authority. We guide developing worlds according to the Imperial Development Protocol. Species are monitored until they reach certain technological thresholds. Then they are contacted, educated in Imperial ways, and integrated into our civilization over several centuries. And if species don't wish to be integrated? Park asked carefully. The assessors looked confused by the question. All species benefit from Imperial guidance, said Yunsuk as if explaining something obvious. Our 12,000 years of peace proves the superiority of our system. After the formal assessment, the humans were escorted to guest quarters while the Imperial Council deliberated. The rooms were luxurious but strangely uniform, lacking any personal touches. Did you see how they reacted when you mentioned our development timeline? Dr. Moon asked as they gathered in Commander Park's assigned room. They're afraid, said Lieutenant Kim. Not just surprised, genuinely afraid. Their entire society seems built on stability and predictability, Moon continued. They've traded innovation for security. Everything is regulated, categorized, controlled. Beck was examining a wall panel he had carefully opened. And technically, they're thousands of years behind where they should be. They haven't improved their fundamental technologies in centuries. Commander Park looked out the window at the vast Imperial city stretching to the horizon. Millions of beings from hundreds of species move through its streets, all following the same patterns, all living within the same unchanging system. They're going to try to contain us, she said finally. They'll classify us as a threat to their order. What will we do? Asked Kim. Park turned from the window, her expression determined. We'll show them something they haven't seen in thousands of years. What's that? Asked Moon. Change, said Park simply. They've forgotten how to change. The United Earth Council chamber buzzed with tension. On the main screen, 30 Imperial warships hung in space just beyond Earth's moon. Their sleek designs and massive size were meant to intimidate, but the Earth representatives studied them with analytical eyes rather than fear. Secretary General Min-Soo Kwan stood at the center of the chamber. They arrived 6 hours ago. They sent a message calling themselves a diplomatic fleet here to establish formal relations. Commander Park, recently promoted to Admiral after her return from Imperial space, stepped forward. This is a show of force, nothing more. They want us to understand our place in their hierarchy before negotiations even begin. The scientific advisor, Do-Hyun Lee, brought up detailed scans of the Imperial vessels. Their technology is impressive in scale but inefficient in design. Their shields consume 3 times the energy necessary. Their weapons systems lack adaptive targeting. Secretary General Kwan nodded. How should we approach this meeting? With unity, Admiral Park said firmly. The Empire expects to meet a single world government that speaks with one voice. Instead, we'll show them our strength lies in our diversity. When the Imperial delegation shuttle landed at the United Nations complex in New York, they were surprised to find not a single negotiating team but representatives from 37 nations and 16 independent colonies. Imperial diplomat Junsu, tall and imposing with dark purple skin, looked confused. This is most irregular. Who speaks for Earth? We all do, replied Secretary General Kwan. Each nation and colony maintains its sovereignty while working together on matters that affect all humanity. Junsu's translator couldn't quite hide his disapproval. Inefficient. The Empire has found that unified planetary governance is essential for species development. The first day of negotiations was difficult. The Imperial diplomats insisted on explaining the benefits of Imperial rule, protection, access to established trade routes, and cultural guidance. They seemed genuinely puzzled when the human representatives asked questions about autonomy and self-determination. Your species will be classified as Category 3, Emergent Independent Developers, explained Junsu. This grants you limited self-governance under Imperial oversight. And if we decline this classification, asked the representative from Brazil. Junsu blinked slowly. Declining is not an option. The Empire maintains galactic stability through universal participation. Admiral Park watched the Imperial diplomats carefully. What if we showed you some of our technology? Perhaps you could better understand our capabilities. The Imperial delegation agreed, clearly expecting primitive demonstrations. Instead, they were taken to research facilities around the world. They witnessed nanomedicine healing wounds in seconds, adaptive AI solving complex problems the Imperial computers had declared impossible, and energy systems with efficiency ratings their scientists had thought theoretical. How is this possible? Junsu asked after seeing a quantum communication system that operated without the signal delay that plagued Imperial networks. Your species has had space travel for less than 2 centuries. We innovate, replied Dr. Jiun Kong, now Earth's lead scientist for imperial relations. We try new approaches. We don't limit ourselves to established methods. By the third day, the imperial diplomats were visibly unsettled. During a break in negotiations, Admiral Park overheard two of them speaking quietly. This species cannot be allowed unrestricted development, one said. They would destabilize 12,000 years of order in a single generation. But their technology is already beyond Category 3 in several areas, the other replied. The containment protocols won't work here. Admiral Park brought this information to the Earth Council. They fear us, she explained. Not our weapons, but our ideas. Our willingness to change and adapt. Then we use that, said the representative from Kenya. We find the gaps in their system. A team of legal experts began studying the imperial legal codes that the diplomats had shared. They discovered something remarkable: the empire's laws had barely changed in thousands of years, creating numerous contradictions and loopholes. On the final day of negotiations, the Earth delegation surprised the Imperials with a counterproposal based on an ancient imperial treaty from 9,000 years earlier that had never been officially repealed. According to the axiomatic covenant of mutual recognition, said Admiral Park, any species that independently develops 3 or more Category 6 technologies is entitled to protected independent status. Junsu's skin darkened with emotion. That covenant is ceremonial, from the early imperial era. But still legally binding, replied the representative from India, as it was never formally dissolved according to Section 12,387 of your own legal code. The imperial diplomats were forced to request guidance from their superiors, leading to tense days of waiting. Finally, they returned with a modified agreement that granted Earth significant autonomy while remaining technically within the imperial sphere. As the imperial ships prepared to depart, Junsu approached Admiral Park privately. You must understand, Admiral, this arrangement is temporary. The Empire has existed for 12,000 years. We think in centuries, not years. Admiral Park smiled. And that's exactly why you don't understand us. We think in possibilities, not certainties. Junsu's expression remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed concern. The Empire will be watching Earth closely. Good, replied Park. We have much to show you. Imperial Governor Hyunwoo stared out the window of his office on Centralis 4, a mid-level imperial world. Below, the city sprawled in perfect geometric patterns, as it had for 1,000 years. But lately, things had been changing in small but noticeable ways. Another shipment intercepted, Governor, said his aide, placing a report on his desk. Human entertainment materials, again. Hyunwoo sighed. What was it this time? Music files, books, and something called films. Also some basic technology manuals, nothing classified, but still unauthorized for distribution. And the distributor? A local merchant. Claims he was just giving customers what they wanted. The aide hesitated. He's the third this month. The governor turned from the window. It's happening everywhere. The humans aren't even trying to spread these things. People are just seeking them out. The music is quite interesting, the aide admitted, then looked embarrassed. Or so I've heard. In a small medical facility on the other side of the city, Dr. Minji held up a small device to her colleague. It's based on human diagnostic principles. Watch. She passed the scanner over a patient, and immediately a complete cellular analysis appeared on the screen, identifying the illness in seconds rather than the hours their standard equipment required. This can't be authorized, her colleague whispered. Minji shrugged. It works. It saves lives. I modified the design from a human medical journal that's been circulating. The Empire hasn't approved it, but they haven't specifically banned it either. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. On manufacturing worlds, workers implemented human efficiency algorithms that the Imperial Technology Ministry would have taken decades to approve. In education centers, teachers quietly incorporated human learning techniques that helped students grasp concepts faster. Admiral Park, now leading a diplomatic mission to worlds outside the Empire's core, found surprising welcomes. "We've been watching Earth," said Jiho, leader of a species the Empire had classified as semi-developed centuries ago. They sat in a simple meeting room on a planet at the edge of Imperial space. "Your people question everything. Do you know how rare that is here?" "The Empire values stability over innovation," Park replied. "For 12,000 years, Jiho nodded. They classified us as limited potential and left us to develop within strict boundaries. But now we've seen what's possible. We haven't shared any restricted technology," Park said carefully. Jiho smiled. "You didn't need to. You shared something more valuable, the idea that things can change. That problems have multiple solutions. That authority should be questioned." As the diplomatic mission continued to other worlds, Park noticed a pattern. Species that had been marginalized by the Empire's rigid classification system were particularly interested in human approaches to governance, technology, and social organization. Meanwhile, across Imperial space, human culture spread like wildfire despite official disapproval. In hidden clubs on wealthy worlds, people danced to Earth music. In private homes, they watched human films that showed worlds of possibility and individual choice. Students passed around human literature that explored ideas the Empire had long suppressed. The Empire tried to contain the spread. They banned destabilizing human cultural materials and increased inspections of ships coming from Earth space. But these efforts only increased interest in the forbidden items. In a high-security meeting on the Imperial capital, the High Council discussed the growing problem. "Reports of human-inspired innovations have increased by 400% in the past standard year," said the Chief of Imperial Security. "Their ships visit our outer worlds under the trade agreements, and afterward, we see spikes in unauthorized activity. Their actual technology isn't the main threat," added the Minister of Cultural Harmony. "It's their ideas. Their approach to problems. They think differently, and it's infectious." On a trade station near the border of Earth space, a young Imperial customs officer named Dongwu made a decision. Instead of reporting the human books he found in a shipment, he took one for himself. That night, he read about Earth's history, how humans had tried different forms of government, how they had made terrible mistakes but learned from them, how they valued individual thought and creativity. The next day, when he found more human materials in another shipment, he looked the other way. Admiral Park sat in her office on the flagship of the Earth diplomatic fleet, reviewing reports from across Imperial space. "They're trying to stop the spread of our influence," said her aide, "but it's not working." Park smiled. "Of course not. They've spent 12,000 years teaching species to follow rules. They have no idea how to stop people who've learned to break them." "What happens next?" the aide asked. Park looked at a map showing the spread of human-inspired changes across Imperial space, small points of light gradually connecting into networks. "Change," she said simply. "And they can't stop it because their greatest weakness is that they've forgotten how to change themselves." The Grand Imperial Palace had remained unchanged for 10,000 years. Its massive stone walls and towering spires represented permanence in a galaxy that the Empire had kept carefully balanced for millennia. But today, something new was happening inside its ancient halls. Admiral Ju-won Park, her hair now streaked with gray after years of diplomatic service, walked through the main entrance alongside representatives from 20 other species. They weren't there as subjects or petitioners. They were there as equals. "The first meeting of the new Galactic Council," said Do-hyun Lee, now Earth's chief diplomat, walking beside her. "Not something I expected to see in my lifetime." "Nor anyone else's," Park replied with a small smile. 3 years had passed since human ideas had begun spreading across the Empire. What had started as simple cultural exchange had grown into something the rigid imperial system couldn't contain. First came the outer worlds, those planets where species deemed limited by imperial standards had lived under tight restrictions for centuries. They had embraced human approaches to governance, technology, and social organization, adapting them to their own needs rather than following imperial standardization. Then came the trade worlds, where merchants had discovered that human economic models created greater prosperity than the carefully controlled imperial system. They had formed new trade alliances outside imperial regulation. The Empire had tried to reassert control. They had sent ships to blockade Earth, to isolate the source of the contamination. But by then, it was far too late. The ideas had spread too widely. The final push came when several core worlds declared themselves independently aligned, still recognizing imperial history and culture but rejecting central control. The Empire had prepared for military action to bring these worlds back into line. What they hadn't prepared for was discovering that humans had shared defensive technologies with their allies. The resulting standoff had forced negotiations and, eventually, the dissolution of the old imperial power structure. Now, in the Great Hall where emperors had once issued unchangeable edicts, representatives from across the galaxy gathered around a circular table, their equality represented in its very shape. "This is not the end of what the Empire built," said former Imperial High Counselor Yunsuk, who had surprised everyone by joining the movement for change. "It is an evolution of it. We keep the peace and cooperation but add the freedom to grow and change. The new Galactic Council established principles rather than rigid laws. Member worlds maintained their own governance while agreeing to shared values of cooperation, free exchange, and non-interference. The former Imperial military became a peacekeeping force, reduced in size but more effective thanks to human tactical innovations." After the first session concluded, Admiral Park stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The once perfectly ordered streets had changed. New buildings in diverse architectural styles rose between the ancient structures. Transportation systems blended technologies from a dozen worlds. Public spaces now featured art and music from across the galaxy. "Thinking about how it all began?" asked Du Hyun, joining her at the railing. With a navigation error, Park laughed softly. "We accidentally flew into their perfect, stagnant empire and were simply unimpressed." They had all the advantages, Du Hyun reflected. Thousands of years of history, hundreds of species, vast territories. By all logic, they should have simply absorbed us. Logic based on their experience, Park nodded. But they had no experience with humans. Below them, beings from dozens of worlds moved through the streets, not in the orderly patterns of the old empire, but in the creative chaos of a truly living society. Some species that had been enemies under imperial rule now worked together, finding strength in their differences rather than fear. "The irony is that what we're building now is stronger than what they had," said Du Hyun. "They had 12,000 years of peace through control. We've helped create something better, peace through cooperation." In the central plaza below, workers were completing a new monument. It was a perfect replica of the ESS Pioneer, the ship that had accidentally started a revolution of ideas. Around its base, beings from different worlds gathered to look and learn about the small vessel that had changed everything. "They thought technology was the measure of advancement," Park said quietly. "They never understood that ideas are the most powerful force in the universe." As the sun set over the former imperial capital, lights came on across the city, not in the perfectly timed sequence of the old regime, but in a beautiful, unplanned pattern that reflected the choices of millions of individuals. "What's next?" asked Du Hyun. Admiral Park smiled as she looked out at the galaxy that had been open to possibility after 12,000 years of carefully managed stability. "Something new," she said simply. "Always something new."